Directing an entity of immense scale requires a specific type of control. The central challenge of modern organizational leadership is steering a complex system precisely without actually touching the engine. This is the insignia for the Institute of Governance and Research. The interlocking continuous rings of this design represent the definitive structural model for achieving that control. Looking at this schematic, we see the baseline condition of all organized enterprise. A rigid horizontal line separates the entity into a binary, a governing body, the board, at the top, and the operating organization below. If this boundary is breached and the board descends to execute daily tasks, the structure collapses into micromanagement. The board loses its perspective, and the organization loses its autonomy. To exert force across that boundary without physically crossing it, the board relies on a specific four-part mechanism. The first two components are steering, which sets the exact trajectory, and policy, which establishes the rules of engagement for the workforce. The final two components are oversight, the method for monitoring the operation, and accountability, the process of reporting the ultimate results. Many boards treat these four duties as a static checklist, assuming they can be satisfied independently during quarterly meetings. In practice, these domains operate as a continuous, self-sustaining mechanical loop. Output from one phase directly dictates the input for the next, generating organizational momentum. True governance is the act of designing and maintaining this closed information circuit. It is the engineering required to guarantee that high-level strategy constantly translates into physical reality. All organizational action originates at the highest level of abstraction. The cycle has to begin with a directive. We establish this initiating node as steering. Providing this direction is the absolute first responsibility of any governing body. Steering begins by setting the organizational tone. This creates the cultural baseline that influences every decision made beneath it. From that tone, the board must provide definitive guidance on the entity's core purpose, its long-term vision, and its operating values. That abstract vision crystallizes into strategy. The board is responsible for defining the specific competitive posture the entity will take. Next, the board manages two opposing forces, balancing caution against aggression to keep the strategy viable. The first force is risk management. These are the organizational brakes. The board dictates exactly what the entity must avoid, mitigate, or fiercely protect against. The counterforce is opportunity maximization. This acts as the accelerator, instructing the organization how aggressively to pursue growth. Together, these five vectors, tone, vision, strategy, risk, and opportunity, create a unified gravitational pull. Steering establishes the rigid boundary conditions of the organization. It engineers the exact constraints and targets within which all operational work must occur. Five abstract vectors from a boardroom cannot physically force thousands of employees to execute the correct daily tasks. There must be a mechanism for conversion. In this diagram, we insert a translation layer called policy and planning. The governing body does not manually write every operational rule or employee handbook. Their mandate is to control the overarching policy direction. Beneath that direction, management designs operational plans. These are the specific, actionable roadmaps detailing exactly how the business will run day to day. The necessary condition here is operational cohesion. Every daily procedure must perfectly align with the long-term strategy set above it. The board must rigorously vet these plans. They apply the policy layer to ensure no planned activity contradicts established purpose or violates risk parameters. A failure in cohesion means management is executing plans that the board never authorized. The organization becomes highly active but moves entirely off course. Policy acts as a strict filtering mechanism. It prevents rogue operations and mathematically guarantees that the front lines are aligned with the boardroom. Once the approved plans cross the boundary and enter the operational phase, the board's role in pushing directives downward pauses. Organizational activities are now running deep within the management layer, largely shielded from the board's direct observation. To peer into this black box without interfering, the board relies on oversight and monitoring. The tool for this is the Key Performance Indicator, or KPI. KPIs are highly specific, measurable data points extracted from the operation to serve as proxies for overall health. The distinction is critical. The board monitors these indicators. They do not monitor the individual minute-by-minute activities of the staff. Restricting observation to the KPI level is the only structural defense against micromanagement. It keeps the board focused on aggregate results, not daily mechanics. The purpose of this monitoring is strictly verification. The board is checking whether the activities are actually generating the desired outputs that were agreed upon during the policy phase. Oversight functions as an instrument panel. The board isn't flying the plane, but they constantly confirm the aircraft remains on the precise trajectory they programmed. This leaves one final variable. The board is gathering oversight data, but who are they gathering it for? The entity exists to serve stakeholders. Whether they are investors, citizens, or beneficiaries, these are the groups that own the organization and entrust its direction to the governing body. Accountability is the mechanism that addresses them. It is the final, outward-facing phase of the governance lifecycle. The board has a firm duty to provide reports explicitly detailing the commitments they made at the start and the actual performance the organization achieved. This requires total transparency regarding the operations of the entity. Transparency means delivering an unvarnished reflection of the KPI data pulled during oversight. It is an objective accounting of reality, devoid of public relations spin. These external reports close the governance loop. They provide stakeholders with the exact data needed to evaluate if the board's strategy and steering were competent. Without transparent reporting, the board operates in a vacuum with zero consequences. Accountability ensures the governing body answers for the machine they built. Looking at the completed architecture, we see a dynamic sequence: direction, translation, execution, verification, and reporting. Governance operates as an interdependent chain of causality. The outputs of each quadrant dictate the success of the next. If the board's steering is vague regarding risk, it becomes impossible for management to write cohesive operational policy. The error cascades downward. If oversight breaks down and the board ignores their KPIs, accountability reports sent to stakeholders become works of fiction. The error cascades outward. The governing body's ultimate job is the relentless maintenance of this specific information loop. When an organization veers off course, a successful board never breaches the boundary to fix the daily operations themselves. Instead, they examine their own loop. They find the broken node, whether it's weak strategy, poor policy translation, or flawed oversight, and repair the system so the organization can correct itself. Governance is the precise calibration of direction, policy, oversight, and transparency. It is the continuous mechanical system that turns abstract vision into accountable reality.